Thank you.
Thank you. When our chairman is ready.
I am ready. We will call to order. Start with a roll call. We'll call order here at 3:31 on October 8th. Roll call. Mark?
Here.
John is not here. Jerry?
Here.
I'm here. Kevin?
Here.
We are so glad you're spending the afternoon with us.
Yes, happy birthday, Kevin.
Bill?
Here.
And Rita?
Here.
Right. That gets us a quorum, and
Yes, sir.
we can get ready to get started. We'll start with the approval of minutes from August. Everybody should have a hard copy of those in front of them. Do we need to take a minute to look through them? Has everybody looked through them, or I will wait till I
They
hear a
were
motion?
on the OneDrive, but
Does everybody remember how to get to that OneDrive? Do we have that link access, or should we send it again?
I resended the link.
Okay.
Did it not come through? You
I'm
did.
just making sure everybody saw it.
It wasn't on the email, but we have the Redevelopment Commission. So easy to get to.
Did everybody have trouble getting on that link? Maybe it didn't go through. It was
That's
on
fine.
the.
I'm just asking, so if once we have a motion, we'll move forward. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion on the August minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
Mark makes a motion. We have a second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries through. Let's start with the old business, which is actually kind of new business because it's amended, but let's go to the Attorney Pittman, let's go to your timeline here that you've adjusted. Maybe hit the high points too of where the adjustments came, what caused those adjustments.
Absolutely. You have your existing I-69 and West
Correct.
You have an existing TIF district, and every TIF district has to be within an underlying economic development area. So they're kind of layered. In your case, they're the exact place. Okay, so what you're doing is you are expanding the underlying economic development area, expanding the TIF district exactly in the same way. And you're also pulling out some of the parcels in the existing TIF districts. Those are the three things that you're going to do. Now, part of that process is the preparation of an amended plan, and that's something that Crystal and Rita worked on together, and that's here. So basically, the process of making those changes goes along lines of the following. There are 4 meetings and 4 meetings at which public bodies take action. The first meeting is this one by the Redevelopment Commission to do an initial approval of the changes. It goes from here to the Plan Commission, and it has to be this in this order, goes to the Plan Commission for their approval. From there, it goes to the City Council for their approval. And then last is another meeting of the Redevelopment Commission where the commission holds a public hearing and then has a confirming resolution. Now, prior to that final meeting of the Redevelopment Commission, there's an elaborate notice process that we'll work together on to take care of. There has to be a published notice of the public hearing. that public that notice has to be provided to, all of the taxing units and a study by your municipal advisor. That's part of the notice process. A report that gives them some understanding of how this impacts their tax situation, if at all. And so after that, the changes are, once you're done with that last meeting, then the changes get explained to and reported to the auditor, because of course they have to administer this. They have to know what all the parcels are that have been added to as part of the expansion. They have to know which parcels have been pulled out, and then that should enable them to administer the expanded area. Does that make sense?
It does. Attorney Pittman, with the, so for a legal notice or the published notice for the public hearing, outside of the paper and the media that we send that to normally for our public hearings for Planning Commission or BZA, you mentioned provided to each taxing unit. Do we send that to them separately, or is it the same legal notice in the paper?
That notice plus a report that Baker Tilly will do is sent to the taxing units. Now, I should mention too that when you expand an economic development area, Indiana law requires that you send this notice of the hearing to every person who owns property in the expanded area. You have to give them personal notice. Now, the notice that I recommend, whenever property owners get like personal correspondence from the government, they think, yikes, what are they doing to my land? And so I try to put in the notice, this has no significance to you other than that it's required by state law that we give it to you. Nothing is happening to you or your property, but they don't believe it. So they may come to the meeting, but especially older people, they can just obsess over this. I wish that they didn't have that requirement in the law. It makes absolutely no sense. You don't have to do that when initially create the area, right? It's only when you expand it. Tell me that makes any sense. But just be forewarned that you may get some nervous property owners showing up to that, and you'll likely get calls.
And for the Redevelopment Commission at that public hearing, Jason Semler from Baker Tilly will also be here, and he will do our annual
Spending plans.
Or
no, your presentation.
Yes, our annual reporting and presentation that he has to do every year anyway. So we are going
Which you invite your overlapping taxing districts to already.
Yes, so they have to come to that anyway. So we're just going to kick it all out at once, which is why on your agenda, which is later, you'll find the spending plan tonight, just to get that done. So we're not having to do all of that at the same meeting.
Okay. So it looks like this is a lot to happen in the next 30 days, roughly.
It's a little longer.
November 12th is when we meet again for.
Yeah, well, I guess that is about.
I know.
Yeah.
It's coming up quick.
And then there's meeting next week, and then a meeting following.
So on the 13th is the Plan Commission meeting, which we do have 2 members here. Thank you guys so much for showing up. They are going to look at that resolution, and they're going to, their job and Plan Commission, if I understand correctly, and Crystal, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is really just to make sure that our resolution and our projects and what we hope to do with this lines with our comprehensive plan. So anytime we do a development plan, anything we do at Plan Commission, we always reference our comprehensive plan. This area is supposed to be for commercial, or this area is supposed to be growth. So they're just looking at it really to say, yeah, new development is what we want in these areas. This is what it's supposed to be. So they're just really, their job is to kind of align that with the comp plan, but that will be presented to them on the 13th.
Okay.
Does that make, did that come across in the email that was kind of the role? Okay.
So not really,
Do we give it a positive recommendation to council then?
well, it'll be in the resolution that you passed, that you'll be asked.
So they're approving,
I'm trying to
And
get
it is a record.
because there are some things we do a pass-fail,
Yes.
and then there's other things that we have to structure the,
Only a recommendation on others.
it's a recommendation to that, and if that passes or
That's
fails,
fine.
then it
What
goes.
is the answer to that, Crystal?
So you're doing two, you're declaring that this plan is consistent with your comprehensive plan.
Right.
And you're making a positive to pass recommendation to the council. So there's it's, because it's consistent, we think you should pass it.
There you go.
yeah, so you're declaring that the resolution matches and giving a positive or negative, however you guys feel to the council. Hoping it's a positive, but.
Well, and that's, Retha and I spoke a little bit about that really kind of looking at your comprehensive plan and looking at the plan that is attached, because each TIF has to have a development plan attached to it that says, this is our intention, this is why we're establishing it, this is what we're gonna do, this is how we think it's gonna benefit. You do have to look at those two documents next to each other and say, okay, what we're saying in this plan follows, and it fits in right here with our goals and objectives of our comprehensive land use plan.
So then just like a rezone recommendation or something, once it gets to council on the 20th, then they approve or adopt that resolution. Okay.
That is their job. They will adopt it then. I mean,
Resolution.
just a resolution.
The council will.
Sure. Yeah.
And then I see your dates on here and not knowing what will come of the Plan Commission and Common Council. Do we meet again then on the 12th? Is there any reason to schedule a time to meet on the 23rd in case there are requested changes, negative recommendations or anything like that, or do we do it at the time we meet?
I think you should kind of get into that.
Okay, good.
There's a major crisis, we'll figure
know.
that out. But
Right.
Any questions on timeline? No? Yeah, we'll keep moving then. Go ahead on the, Aretha, you can go into new business here. Approve the,
So you guys do have the amended economic development area plan, yes. I believe this is the last one that was sent. We had multiple ones. And I will pull that up here too as well to just make sure we are, which one, Crystal, I'm gonna have you look at, so the amended, this one?
Nope, it should have yesterday's, should have an October date.
you click modified at the top, put them in order.
Older to newer, maybe.
Keep scrolling down.
Yesterday, oh, that was that minutes added. So you did email one yesterday, but I thought it was the same. I thought it was just a different format.
Nope.
Okay.
You can click on the 922 one, and I can tell you if anything's changed.
Which is this one? Or,
Yeah, do the PDF, because it should have the attachments.
okay,
Yeah, that has all the exhibits.
okay. So here it is. You will see that it is just a lot more substantial than when we initially were coming up with projects. We were initially just kind of looking at what we could do. And if you guys remember in our original economic development plan, they had written for some reason only 3 things that could be done in that TIF district, which was realigning a sewer, building a water tower, which is done, and work on Hetzler Court. So at that time, they were very specific on what could be done with TIF funds. So we knew right away we wanted to expand that and make sure that we could use these funds for infrastructure projects or help development, all kinds of things. So that was where we all kind of started on, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. How can we do that? Now we have all of the attachments, all of the exhibits, and Crystal, you can kind of talk about the order.
Yep, so probably the first 6 pages are pretty similar to what you've been seeing. That's really kind of the meat and potatoes of the plan itself. It explains, under what state statute you're allowed to do these things, why you're doing them to improve the health, benefit, and welfare of the residents of the town of Angola, or the city of Angola. And then when you get to so the exhibits start on what would have been page 7. And if you can remember, we talked a lot about that legal description and what the legal description does for you. And because it's a really long, I went ahead and put page numbers at the bottom of that footer, just so that you know the next 9 pages is your legal description.
I think John was gonna read through that.
Still working on it.
I started to even read it and was like, I have no idea what this means. I think Bill Boyer he was probably matching up while he was reading it.
I'm sure. So
I had no concept.
the intent here is really, as we talked about before, we are identifying parcels that we think have development opportunity, but we're connecting them via right-of-way. And so it was really important to do a legal description in addition to a later exhibit you'll see, which is the parcel list. Because there's a lot of connection between these blobs of parcels. So that's why the legal description is so important. The second reason the legal description is so important is as properties subdivide, the parcel ID numbers are going to change. And we have experienced this in other communities. If they only have the parcel ID list, those parcels go inactive, and guess what? Now you're not only getting the old money, you're not getting any money for that stuff anymore because of parcel IDs. So you would have to amend your plan every time you subdivided a parcel or changed a parcel ID number. So the legal description really is kind of establishing the boundary. It should help now that we have GIS. It's way easier than it used to be in the good old days when you didn't have GIS. Now we have GIS, and the map and the legal descriptions have been counter-checked. We started with the GIS map, we went into CAD, which is the survey drawing tool. We went back into GIS to make sure everything coordinated. On the map that you see up here, the color coding is if it's blue, like the heavy blue, those are the parcel IDs. Those are the parcels that are listed in the exhibit that's coming. Anything that's kind of just outlined in that green area, that's our connecting right-of-ways. So we are not taking in the parcels adjacent to that right-of-way into the TIF. So that's why this legal description should help keep things clear as we move through the next 20 to 25 years. So again, as I mentioned, the dark blue blobs on that map are what is listed then on the next 3 pages that start Steuben County parcel identification numbers. Those are what the parcel identification numbers are today. So again, this is really important for the auditors and assessor's office because they're not going to read through that legal description and figure out which parcels are in and which parcels are out. So this has to be distributed to them so they can keep track of it. And Rita and I have talked as things subdivide. Fortunately or unfortunately, she's kind of a one-woman show. She's going to know if a subdivision goes through. And her and Nick in the GIS department can make sure that they then contact the county so the county's aware when those parcel IDs change or we get an additional parcel in our legal descripted TIF area. So that's what that piece is. And then Exhibit B is, again, just reinforcing what the permissible projects are. This is right out of the state statute. And then, just because ultimately someone may be interested, there are the sheets 1 of 8 are actually the CAD drawings. They just kind of, because the overall map is kind of hard to read, it's a very large area. So these are individual sheets, so that if you're interested in looking, you'll be able to grab the section and I just have a closer view of it.
Anybody have any questions on what we're looking at here? Have a discussion on it, or we can make sure we approve that today too.
I feel like we have gone over, we've removed areas from the map, we've added areas from the map, we've looked at places that we felt like wouldn't get developed if we didn't help. We've looked at areas that we felt like, hey, I think there's gonna be development here, let's capture that. So I feel like as a commission, you guys did a great job in just determining what made the most sense for development, what could that look like? If I go back to that, some of the industrial area, some of the, commercial area, places that some of them that we've heard, hey, we might look at for development, other ones, it's just hoping that we can get something there. But I think as we do continue to grow, as people are looking at us more often, as we've got some potential development. One area that you are all familiar with is the Serenova development. So that is one that when that primary plat comes through, it will be subdivided into different parcels. So I will then, with the engineering department's help, get the county those parcel numbers that will be added into this list. So that will probably be honestly our first amendment, because right now it's just one big parcel. So there will be some amendment. Now, I don't know that those are amendments, but they'll just be additions to
That's why we aren't doing individual parcel IDs.
That's why, yes.
Yeah, that's why the legal description was particularly important,
Right.
is because
Yes.
other communities have suffered because they end up having to amend the plan every time they end up with a subdivision, which is nonsense, so.
I think it's pretty critical, you can zoom in on that, but it's pretty critical to note what you just said, to reiterate. But the Serenova, you mentioned that property, but that's not the entire property, that's just the front portion of that property that was gonna go to commercial.
Yes.
So,
Yes, sir.
We weren't talking the entire property.
Right.
We were talking bike paths going through there and things like that potentially could need to be
Yeah,
done.
do we
or
need to
some
relocate that
infrastructure.
bike
Yeah.
path?
Okay.
What could we do to help with that?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are some of those things but also in here, in this new plan, we talk about things that it could be little incentives for developers, signage. I mean, we talked about
Yeah.
signage or sidewalks, just things that we're not talking about giving somebody 200,000. We're just saying, hey, this is what, if you fit in these parameters, this is what we're willing to help you with your project to give you that little incentive. So I think we did a good job. I think we picked some good parcels. I think we are running alongside there. The more I hear about SB1 and some budget cuts and some infrastructure issues, that we could help, spur development by helping with some of that infrastructure, I think is a huge, huge thing for us as a community. So
And
I'm excited.
And I think it's important for not only for the redevelopment commission, but for the planning commission and the general public to understand, these are all local public improvements. So anything you're doing is ultimately going to be owned and for the benefit of the community. It may serve an individual company that they're getting sewer or water, but it's still the city's sewer and water system. So it's, and that extension may serve 5 different companies, not just one individual company. So it's really important when people think about TIF, it's still money that's going back into your community. It's not something you're sticking in your back pocket and, using to have, vacations in Tahiti or whatever. All that
Wait a
money
minute,
has to, sorry, take that off the list. All of this money is going back into the community to make improvements that the community will benefit from.
Correct. You have on here to approve that. We need to take a, vote to approve that as is.
I think so, Attorney Pittman, is that they need to do a motion and,
You are technically approving that by approving the resolution. You can do it separately. You don't have to because it's incorporated in the
Gotcha. And so we don't approve the resolution until we're all the way.
Well, no, it'll be a second resolution later.
Okay.
That is, says that it confirms that first resolution.
You have to declare yourself.
Oh, my goodness.
And then later on, you go, yep, I still want to do that.
It's not a bad idea though,
the resolution, oh, that's okay. It can still be,
So we can add that
yeah.
to there.
So
Okay.
we can make an adjustment. I didn't add necessarily the resolution. So tonight, we need to approve the resolution that you
Yes.
have in front of you. Right, okay.
Correct. Yep. And that, if I was to throw this in chat, and I said I want it written to me in 5 sentences, can you give me 5 sentences on what this says?
I can.
Okay,
It says, I can do it in 3 sentences.
perfect.
We want to expand the TIF district. We want to expand the underlying economic development area. Let me go to 4. Okay, you said 5.
I know.
The third thing, we want to remove some of the parcels. And fourth, we want to approve an amended economic development plan. Did I leave anything out?
Thanks.
Any discussion on that? We can take a motion to approve it.
When he said remove some of the parcels, those were those original ones that we had talked about, the residential ones, the residential that were gonna give us negative increment that, with the new property tax laws and things coming up, those were recommended by Baker Tilly, Jason Semler to get out of the TIF district, the single family residential.
As well as there were some unbuildable wetlands area too that we took out of that.
Some unbuildable area, some, like a couple churches that
Yeah.
don't pay taxes, things like that, that we removed. Jason did get a list of parcels from the county. Crystal and her team went through and matched all of those. There were some other ones that were also removed. So we've been back and forth with this a lot, but those were the removed and then the additional parcels that Attorney Pittman spoke about that we added.
I would make a motion to approve the new written resolution as submitted.
Mark makes a motion to approve as submitted. Do we have a second?
I second.
Carrie seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carry through. We have, Brian is not here, right? Was he gonna be here for that spending plan or not?
He is not, I don't believe.
Okay, that's fine. I'm gonna do something before we go to, I don't know if I can do this or not, but, before I go into the spending plan, I'm gonna open up and let you guys ask questions. Am I allowed to do that? I'm going to. Can we do that? That way you guys aren't wasting your time forever. Do you have questions or anything that you'd want? Explain.
I asked my questions, prior to the meeting. So
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What part of Angola are you talking about?
Yes. Are you able to pull it back up?
Yeah,
So I'll explain
I
it
gotta
while she's
get it.
pulling it back up. So currently, do you know where it is currently? Where our current district is? Basically out, I'm gonna use local terms rather than like where we're at so we can understand. Yeah, out where 69 where the hotel is and stuff, that was all underneath that.
Okay.
What we're doing, and then there was some, the trailer court that's behind there, it was part of it. We've removed the trailer court because it won't produce anything as residential like it is. And there was some area just east of it that was unbuildable ground, so that's been removed. And then it actually had the Nazarene church in it as well, so that was removed because they're not paying those property taxes as well. So, or maybe it was Sunlight, one of them, they're right there.
Yeah.
And then it goes on to, back to like where SOS is, back in Hetzeler Court, like where the fuel station is, it has the barns for sale. That's where it was, and we're keeping it there. We're adding some on the, where the old, what was the hotel that was there, the Best Western or whatever it was, right there on the other side of the interstate where the Loves is?
Oh, okay. All the blues.
What was that, what hotel was that? And then it changed. So she's gonna explain.
Eric, we can hand that.
Oh,
We're gonna
this,
pull the old new plan back up, but
well, this doesn't show,
that's right, okay.
this is like a lot of area.
Well, the purple, the shaded purple is the existing TIF.
Oh, okay.
So that's why that's on there. I was trying to get back into the plan to show her the map of the new, because my Esri maps were not, it wasn't opening the way that.
So,
And these are part of this?
That's so,
it will all be.
part of the expansion.
Expansion.
Yep. So this already exists.
Thank you.
So what we're doing is, so we're like, okay, we're gonna, it's like, this was part of the TIF before. It's all those single family homes. We've taken that out now, so that's not there anymore. It doesn't do us any good. But we're gonna add this, we're gonna add all this stuff that's in.
So she's got it pulled up here on the screen now. It might be easier to
This is Love's
see.
over here.
Yeah.
That's not included in that.
Loves is, so now Loves is
No,
here.
Loves
It was
is-
not, Loves is not, but just east of that where their property is, or west of that, that is now included. And then we used, and this is where the green lines are, it's hard to see, there's no blue between these green, because it's just the right of way to get to these properties. You're gonna correct me, Crystal. We're gonna come down 20, there's a property here that's developable. And then we'll come in, and then we get into downtown, and we're taking the downtown blocks. We're coming down Darling, there's a Superior, and taking some of this. There's been discussion about potential development there.
Even like connecting the Trine Trail to our trail, there's something that we might could help with is on there.
And then we're taking the downtown area. A lot of that is for, a lot of these properties, people aren't doing with because the infrastructure is not there to do anything. You couldn't develop on this corner because there's not enough water to do a fire suppression system. So
Everybody on the west side shares a water line through.
we
their
might have to
business.
put water into those things. So we want to make sure we grab all of that to make sure that the downtown can stay up to date on those things, which is hard to believe, but that's why a lot of stuff doesn't happen sometimes down here. Then we head north. This is the property where the old Dairy Queen, what's there now? Guadalajara,
Yeah,
Craig's building there.
Dairy Queen works.
Yeah. See, we're connected now. This is the old Dana property kind of there. And then it actually goes all the way over to Woolert. None of this has been developed. And we came all the way to Woolert as well, because if we ever in the future want to do something, and again, and we say, hey, there's a corner property, there's just a cell tower, we could do that easily if we already have it that far. So that's why those got picked up as well. And as we head north, we came down to the new Woolert. It's not called that.
Woolert Street Extended.
Extension, yeah, okay, Woolert Extended. That property that's been for sale for a lot of years back there, the reason that property is not selling is there's no utilities on the Extended. So that, there's no, when they put Woolert in, they didn't run any utilities.
Because it
So
was
if we
just
want that
supposed to be a truck.
develop, we've had people call the city and say they want to do stuff, well, the cost to get it there is really tough. So we grabbed those properties as well. This is ground behind,
Wenzel's.
no, it's boat, the boat, where do they make, I can't say their name, AMI? Marine Products. AMP.
Indiana Marine,
Indiana
IMP.
IMP. This is where IMP has, there's ground out, you're behind Wenzel, you are 100% correct. It's behind Wenzel and IMP. It's just bare ground that they park on, that is about all the ground that's left back there that could be developed on. So that was picked up as well. This area here is that front portion, all of this was Saranova, but this is that portion that they have planned out to run road through and do commercial property. One reason we've mentioned a little bit could potentially, and they have not asked any of these questions, but we're trying to have a little bit of foresight and proactive. If they do what they're talking, we may not want that bike trail right along the main road. And there may be, we could share some of that burden from a developer and move that in a better spot that would be safer as well. So that was one area there. This is the, we could start, this is how rumors start. We could make up a whatever building that's gonna be, and you guys, there's still some lots here. This is like where the TJ Maxx is, and there's still some lots there.
Lots at Meyer and around that aren't developed.
So we grabbed those, and then this property up here is 101 Lakes. And I can't share what that is. That's top secret. I can't do that, can I? We don't know what's gonna happen. Nothing is planned there.
Oh, you carved out Wendy's?
You got what I said.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we carved, the Wendy's is,
already existing, and there wouldn't be any reason for us to help them develop anything. It's already done, but.
and then there's some outlots in front of Menards as well. Like where the urgent care, whatever, what it's called now.
You talked about the bike trail, Eric.
Yes.
If you could put the bike trail that goes in front of Menards and Kohl's and put it someplace else, because that's
Correct.
dangerous.
There's and I can share this, Chris. I think I've been correct on this too. So also, let's say the bike trail, I'm going to think way wild here. Let's say the bike trail needs to go down Woolard Street. Okay. And you see, we don't have Woolard on here. If we made that case that quality of life was improved by this, and you're going to tell me if I'm wrong, but if quality of life is improved by this, we could potentially say we're going to put a trail down Woolard Street. We're not looking at doing that or anything else. So we can connect quality of life as well. So behind the Menards and stuff, even if it's not part of it, we might be able to do something like that.
And you were just talking about Saranova and so forth, and that's one of the reasons I just don't go north. I don't want to end up on the front end, but
Yeah, they don't look. They don't
When
look.
you're on the trail?
There's so many intersections there.
That gets really concerning.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
You can confirm, but generally, the rule of thumb is it's in or serving the TIF area. If you can make the legal argument that that trail is needed so that people can get from where they live to jobs, and the jobs and where, the jobs are in the TIF, you say, hey, yeah, this is a way that we're helping economic development. This is a public improvement.
We've talked about sidewalks down Woolard Street for years. People talk about how dangerous it is. People walk in the middle of the street because they're walking to their factory at 4 o'clock in the morning and you can't see them. And I mean, I see that on Facebook all the time. This is a way that we can start without having to, we don't have the funding. The city doesn't have the funds automatically to do some of that stuff, but this is a way that we can help as a redevelopment commission, help get some of those projects done without looking elsewhere for funding.
If you have somebody that calls you and says, I'm Joe Blow and I have great ideas, I want to bring a business to Angola, do you say, come on in and look at this blue on this? And these are all wonderful places that you might be interested in. Are you trying to sell them on locations, or how does that work?
So being so new at this point, I've actually told one person so far that, hey, starting in January, if all goes through, this property will be in a TIF district.
I think the question is this, and I'm going to repeat it because I know you do this. I'm going to brag on Aretha, but because her and I don't talk about it. She'll have somebody call that says, this is a great location in Indiana, like where your location is. And she will give them a list of areas that they should move into, not connected to I think your question wasn't necessarily connected to the TIF district. You're asking what Aretha does as well. And she can now use this and say, hey, here's properties, here's great ideas. Also, if you're here, we might be able to work with you on XYZ because it's in that district. But on a regular basis, you're taking calls and helping people find locations.
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking, Tina?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, because it's kind of spread, it's not all in one location. It's spread around and, very interesting.
And another one, just so you guys are educated on it too, because we took a long time to get educated, or I did. We've talked about the trails and the infrastructure. Another one we could potentially do too, and I think we still have in here, unless I missed it, but we've discussed before, would be, and the SB1 could affect all of this too, but water department could call and be like, hey, this is where we're at. We need this service truck to service this area. But we can't get it in our normal budget because of whatever is happening out there. That would be something else that we would say, hey, that truck is servicing this area. It's needed to make this happen. We could potentially use funds to do things like that as well. Is that,
That's absolutely correct, yeah.
we can paint a water tower.
I think we should paint the water towers like they did down in Ashley.
Ashley.
They're painting
We're
this
getting
one now.
one painted on
We're getting a
right now.
hornet on it, I hear.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's,
Cool.
Those are
they were gonna
rumors,
put the
Eric.
X
Those
over
are
Fremont,
rumors,
but
can
they
you
can't do
just?
My daughter said it looks like a pin code.
Or the school board.
But we are excited to have some potentially more incentive, and communities have redevelopment areas, they have TIF areas, they have bonded against them, they've been, and I'm waiting till we have to do that for Attorney Pittman to explain to me how all of that works, but they are much more active than we are. We just have not been because we've only had that one area. So this goal to expand and maybe even grow more eventually, like that goal is there, is just to start being more active with these funds and spur that development. When you look at the city of Auburn, which is a complete cluster right now with the traffic, but the Texas Roadhouse area, that whole area was all in a TIF district. They were able to use that to spur some of that development. And again, that's not necessarily what we're going for, but it's just, we haven't had that opportunity because we've never used, we have no loans against or bonds against the TIF that we have now. We've never done that. It's never been active.
Another great example is, I don't know if you've recently gotten off the toll road interchange in Elkhart. And all those, if you've driven and you see the beautiful signage and all that, that was all paid for by TIF.
Now, where does the TIF money come from?
So
Can I explain it? It's like I understand it. Because when you guys explain it, I really get confused. So if you're gonna tell me if I'm wrong, that way I know if I'm telling somebody else correctly. But once it's in a TIF, so we're just gonna use numbers. This property is paying $1,000 a year right now in property taxes. It's in the TIF, and 5 years go by, and now they're paying $4,000 just because everything around them is improved. That $3,000 comes to the TIF district. The 1,000 goes to where it was going. The property owner's not paying any more. They would have paid the 4 just because it continued rising. Does that make sense? So the difference between what they're paying now and what it is in the future comes to the TIF district. That's as simple as I can say it. Did I say that correctly? Does that make any sense, or what question?
So you don't have to have any improvements, it could be just
Correct.
natural appreciation.
Or depreciation, that's what we don't want,
Oh, that's true.
right?
Let me comment.
Yes.
That's a great question because you might say, well, just because the property, the pre-existing property appreciates, why should you get any TIF from that? But you do.
And so it's just the normal appreciation, it gets calculated every year, 1 year
It does.
behind and so forth, and then it just automatically goes to that tax on the appreciated amount only goes towards the TIF, it doesn't go to the pie chart.
Right, exactly.
And so I will also say, we have tried desperately not to take on any dilapidated
Correct.
buildings because it works the opposite way as well. So what happens is they set the base assessed value of the whole area. So this is what's gonna happen once it's established. They'll say everything in those blue blobs, all those blue properties have $1 million of value. Okay? The next year, say there's a big old factory that's in there that burns down, and its individual property costs go down. So now my overall area, because everything else has stayed the same, now that I've had that demolition of that building, now my value is only $900,000. So it works both ways, increment or decrease. Because what it's doing is as of January 1, 2026, they set the value. This is what we call our base assessed value. Whether it goes up or down, that number stays the same. That number is what continues to be distributed to everybody normally, the schools, the library, everybody else. It's the up or down that the redevelopment commission sees
And only the businesses
that are in the blue
that are
blobs.
in the blue get tiffed.
Yes,
And that's the money that is generated from those blue areas only go into those blue areas.
or
Mostly.
Or you can make a legal argument that, and like we were just talking about a sidewalk, that is going to benefit the blue areas.
Okay.
Or the water truck, right?
It's still
Or the
benefiting the
water.
blue.
So it cannot be used outside those blue areas.
Unless you can confirm that it's benefiting
But
them.
if another business,
So-
if I bought another property, I couldn't put in infrastructure into a business that wasn't part of that blue area.
So one of the thoughts early on, when Harcourt was thrown eastward to where the Y is, was 827 was supposed to develop. Now, we can't invest any money along 827 outside the city limits.
Outside of the
TIF won't
city.
go outside of, yeah.
And even if it's in the ETJ, it cannot go outside the city limits to put in a new factory between here and 200 north, correct? All right,
Correct.
Right.
got all that?
Yeah,
Committed to memory, right?
sure is.
Can I ask a question? We talked about growing and expanding and all that kind of stuff, and you handle these calls that come in that people want to potentially move in and things like that and inquire. And you, I'm sure, do a very good job selling them on, we've got this location and this location and this location. How many times, I know this is off subject a little, but how many times do those discussions just get killed because of our utilities?
So, more recently, they get killed because of gas utility, because of NIPSCO not having a lot of capacity in our area. So some of those have gotten killed recently for that. Woolert Street Extended, I mentioned I have had somebody, they want to subdivide their property, so there's 5 acres that butts up to Woolert Street Extended. When that was originally built, it was just kind of a bypass to the industrial area, so utilities were not put in. They looked at it and said, hey, we're from southern Indiana, we want to relocate here. We think this is great. We do a lot of shipping up to northern Michigan. We think this is a perfect location. I, of course, said, yes, absolutely it is. And they said, this is the spot we want. Where do utilities come in front? I said, well, you'll have to go down to the intersection of Harcourt and Woolert and bring them because you don't have any that run along front there. And they said, yeah, never mind. I mean, basically, that was kind of the gist. So there are some times that our infrastructure we don't have good capacity. They have to increase a water size line or something. But right now, the majority of our issues are NIPSCO. We are working on that. The county and the city have partnered to work with NIPSCO to get some gas upgrades in the area. It's just going to be a little while.
So in that example of that company coming into Woolard Extended, you could have said, yeah, we don't have any utilities, and you'd have to get the water from Harcourt and Woolard and brought down there. You could say, however, we can help.
Yes.
Yeah, so now I can say,
So
you could come to our redevelopment commission, we can work out and negotiate something with you and give you some money to help extend those utilities.
Do you have any idea how much money will be generated through this TIF?
So Jason, our Baker Tilly, which does our finances for the city, they do, they look at all of that. They estimate what's coming in, what that increment can be, and they will give us those numbers. So that will be part of his annual report, I think. Is that?
Well, it will be, but keep in mind, there are no identified projects.
Right.
in these expansion areas. So we start, at zero, and as new companies look, they will be the sources of the TIF.
So part of us,
You're not gonna, right now, you cannot collect from any of those businesses that might be in there.
No, we'll
They're
collect,
already in there.
so
Yeah.
We'll collect, so there'll be some in there, I will share now, there's some in there now, because we pay in arrears, right? So there's some in now.
But it isn't in place yet, so
once
it's
it's-
as of 2026.
So there's some that are gonna appreciate very quickly potentially because they've been done in the last so many months. To answer that, that's what you're asking, I think.
Well, what I'm trying to get at is that, all right, we expect to garner $50,000 on a year-over-year basis to increase, per inflation, whatever it might be, and I don't know. And $50,000 is just pull it out of the air for an example. It could be $2,500 for all I know. But, I was just trying to see where that critical mass would be to put that, have Rita put that in her back pocket when that person calls back again.
So one thing that is nice is we have had one for a little while and now it's finally starting to build. So there are, which is a little backwards, but it's like we're starting all over. It feels like it because we're doing a new, and it's still vast. But the difference is we actually have monies available now, which will help that process, which typically you wouldn't have that available, but we have monies available
You
now.
already have a TIF that's generating cash.
And that's why we're doing an amendment or whatever we're doing.
That's why we're expanding and not
it rather
starting a
than-
new one.
And you're gonna move that existing cash over into the next.
It's all the
Serve the whole
same thing,
area.
yeah.
Eric, are you saying that there's some construction in progress that has not been assessed yet? Is that
Yes.
Correct.
that good point?
No, and that's what I mean. That's where those dollars will show up right away.
That is.
We were strategic on that.
That
Yeah,
was
so how much is in there right
As long
now?
as it wasn't assessed as of January.
Look at his financial.
Sorry, here's the number. $1,138,533.
Incredible.
But I can tell you, 3 years ago, I'm gonna make numbers up, but 3 years ago, it was
700.
700 maybe.
$700.
And we've spent
700,000.
500 out of it, I think.
Sounds right.
For the only time it was spent was for the sign over 69. It was an Angola sign.
Nice job, guys.
I got a
That was
question.
good.
How do other communities do this? Do they have this TIF program?
Oh, yeah.
And so other communities don't have all the utilities lines into an area or even going down the street that they could just connect into. Are we behind or is this gonna catch us up?
I don't know that we're behind it, and maybe you want to answer, Eric. We have had a very small TIF area. A lot of communities, their entire town is a TIF. I mean, there are some communities that TIF, all of, the city of Auburn has a very large TIF district. Coldwater, I think, has large, they have a bigger TIF that they've had for years. We, years and years ago, I can't remember when this was, Bill, you might remember. Do you remember when Vivian did the original TIF area?
Not exactly.
So
I think it was like 90-something.
I mean, that was, and that's it. We've never touched it since then. So,
It took a long time for it to generate any money once
Yes.
it went in place.
Wouldn't you agree though that, and maybe I'm wrong, but wouldn't you agree that our utilities and our infrastructure has cost us substantial business in the last few years?
I put the developer hat on and say 100%.
I would say it's cost us a ton of business.
Yeah, it has. I can tell you
So
countless projects.
I would say yes, I think it's cost us a lot.
But one thing that we are
Like
doing
our
different this
local
time
infrastructure?
that we didn't do last time, I won't say incorrectly, but our TIF district had very few property owners in it. It covered a decent span with a lot of potential, but had very, very few different property owners in it. And when that's the case, it can limit the potential for development. So in this case, we were very cognizant of, we want to make sure we have a lot of different property owners of bare ground, shovel-ready projects, as well as downtown projects where it's not the same property owners, because they can control how quick it goes too. We had a
It's wonderful
president.
that this is happening. It really is.
Good.
Yeah.
Go ahead, you were gonna say something.
I don't know, we had a presentation, what, 2 or 3 years ago from the people in charge of
In
the.
Fort Wayne,
From Fort
yes.
Wayne. And what they were doing was light years beyond what we're trying to do here. I mean, it was almost, it got to the point where maybe they were even competing with private equity on some of the projects they were doing.
Yeah, you're right.
We could be, we don't have any of this in here, but we could use this in the future to purchase property, and that's an example of what they
Dilapidated
would do.
properties
And
that.
then when they come in, yeah, Aretha's gonna be like, yeah, we've got property to give you. So, well, we're not looking deer there, Bill.
I want to follow up on Mark's
Yes.
question. Are the utility problems the city or other utilities, NIPSCO?
That's a good question. So what I've experienced from the developer side was some of both, right? Scarcity is not scarcity has been on both sides. But the difference is, you're working with different entities, right? So if you're working with the power or gas, they're gonna do what they wanna do. Where if you're gonna, here's a good example, we'll use Love's gas station. Here's what happened at Love's. And Bill, you might have been part of that, so you could, Aretha, I know you probably were, but the Love's gas station, there was no water out there. So Love's paid for the water to go out there, which is great. But Love's has other property, there's other property that's not Love's property out there, but to tie into that water, who's gonna get paid? It's not the city, even though it's their water. Love's is gonna get some of that money up
Well,
front.
those agreements expire
Yeah.
They do, so some of that is driven, some of it as well.
15 years.
Yeah.
Because we used to have a whole drawer full of them, but that might be close to being expired.
Yeah, I don't know, better buy some ground.
I would argue that it's power and gas's problem. It becomes the city's problem.
It is, we've had issues with,
Bill.
we've had issues with water too, getting water placement
true.
because of the size of the line and some
3
sewer.
years left.
Yeah.
on
But you were, majority of it is there.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yes. I mean, there's definitely, I forgot about some of that, and we had good foresight of the water tower that went out there so that Love's could actually connect into that initially. You know, there was, I mean, yes, I think that this will bring us up. And like Kevin stated, there's like the city of Fort Wayne and other communities that are, you know, they have a whole department that's all they do is their redevelopment commission, you know, that it's what they do. And so I think that as we grow this and as we understand it and start to see the value in this, there's a lot more that we can do as a redevelopment commission that we just have never exercised or done. And we learned a lot from when Fort Wayne came and some of the things they were doing, we were like, what? You know, we didn't know we had that power.
Kevin talks about everything that Fort Wayne's done, and they have. But you could argue because of the toll road and 69,
Yeah.
we should be a better place for businesses to locate than Fort Wayne.
There's no question, you're 100% correct on
I've
that.
been telling our story. Let me just tell you, I have been the attorney or the deputy governor's office. Am I saying that right? The lieutenant governor. I could not think. His office was here last week or something, a couple representatives, and I went in and we started talking, and I'm like, let me tell you how great this location is. You have to understand when we're at 80, 90s right here and 69s right there, and you can be in Detroit in 2.5 hours, and Chicago in 3 hours, and you can be like, we are just primed for some great development, and not just industry or commercial, but housing and all kinds of things. And it's just getting this infrastructure, getting people to see that, starting to take a little risks with development, starting to partner with developers a little bit more because we have the ability to do that with this district. And so, I mean, I do think it's an exciting thing. It's just, it's taken us a year. We've been working on this.
It's been a while, and we can be used
We're all ready.
to the private utilities, we can be used as a funding mechanism as well for these projects as well, where it's not necessarily straight to the city's water line, but there's a funding bonding
There's a way
opportunity
to
too.
get there. Yeah, it's
So-
roundabout, but you can.
And also, I think too, guys, just to take note, because you will get questions, and this will probably come up at Plan Commission, but it used to be that people felt like TIF districts were taking away from other taxing units, like the schools or the library, I don't know what else, townships, things like that. And now the way that the schools are paid are, the mayor will say, butts in the seats. Like,
You guys don't get paid actually at all anything anymore, do you?
As far as
Any money, you take everything you can get at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's, student count is basically your operating fund. You know, you still got your basics that you see on your property taxes, but then a lot of your funding then comes, it's worth about a little over $8,000 a student now from the state. And so that's why you're seeing the competition between the schools now of trying to draw people in.
Which, something like this then allows us to help with spurring more housing developments, more commercial, that brings more people in, that brings more students to the school. So we're not taking away from any of our taxing units, we're just adding some more possibilities for them.
We're taking less now to get more in the future.
I shouldn't have any questions now. We summed up a year's worth of work for you.
See, you guys, that's teach the teacher.
And we didn't mention this, I think, but we won't put, we
yeah,
did try to avoid all nonprofits too. Because that's not gonna add any value to.
Sure.
Saying that tongue in cheek though, I know a large one in Fort Wayne, the state is changing things on that as well, where they are starting, it's getting harder to prove your nonprofit status on property taxes. So that could be something we see before too long, just
I didn't realize.
Yeah, it's happening.
They tightened it.
happening. Any other discussions on that? Do you guys have anything else?
No,
Okay.
answered all the questions. Thank you.
Be a proud spokesman for us. I think we can do good things.
Right.
The last thing we have to cover is our spending plan. And I will say our spending plan is something for a long time, we had money in account, we never had a plan for it. Now we have to say we have a plan for it, but we don't really have to stick to the plan that we have for it. It's kind of a crazy thing.
It's kind of a
that the
living plan, I think it can be
requires
amended
us
at
to
any
do.
time.
So
it has to be turned in December 1st to the DLGF. Ryan turns this in. We went through this last year. So you all have a hard copy of the financial report from our clerk treasurer that tells you that we have, which Eric already alluded to, $1,138,533.58. So,
I'm gonna read off this, Rita. I'm just gonna.
okay, yeah, you
save some
do,
time here.
yep.
So you guys have a blank one in front of you. It's got $0. It was paper clipped to it. I'm gonna just tell you the numbers. If you wanna write them down, you can, but you don't have this one. I'm gonna tell you what we did last year. That's just maybe the first and easiest place to start. We had $100,000 for debt service. We had 200,000 for capital expenditures allowed. We had 500,000 for professional expenses. We shouldn't have said that. Crystal and attorney. We had 5,000. There was somebody. Operating expenses, we had 88,000. We had to balance, which was 88,753. So last year when we did this, we had 888,000 available. So saying that, we can start where we want to. But we're trying to make that balance of 1.138. I don't foresee anything on here unless Rita tells me different that is going to change that we see coming up that we have to be ready for differently.
I had a question, Eric.
Yes.
What amount did you say you had for professional?
Cancel that to zero.
We can take a vote if you want, right?
Want to kick me out?
A long walk. Anything,
Is it up
You guys have.
to 20% you can take for public safety? Or is it 15? I can't remember.
There isn't a limit. The limit is on if you want to get the school some money. There's a 15% per year.
It's not just a blank, it has to be for certain employment programs.
Yeah.
You can create a program with the schools it's economic development related. It's not just, you can give up to 15% of the school. It has to be approved training programs to offset the cost of approved training programs.
Say if you're if you're working with the city to train future firefighters in a program, would that qualify?
We'd have to look through the details of what those requirements are, but yes, it's.
Good call.
It's specifically related to training, or if you have, there's,
go to like
some
SR.
communities that have like special tool and die business in town, and so they create a work study program at the tool and die business, and things like that can sometimes be qualified.
There's a separate category for that type of thing in the list of permissible
Yeah.
Skilled trade?
training.
Yeah, but you do have to create a program though for it, and to go through the process and make sure it can be technically approved.
So I'm coming up roughly, didn't do the math, about 250,000 more than what we had last year. Or you probably did the math, is that pretty close?
Close.
Okay. Recommendation wise, I don't see the educational and training programs. I never thought about that, Kevin. I think that's a place to put some dollars. I don't know what you guys think on that.
As far as from the city side budget for that?
Yeah, I mean, if we can, so I know that they got grants and things
Yeah.
for some of that, so yeah, if that's something you guys wanna do, I'm all on board. I mean, that's.
With the new,
you guys
with the
give
new
me numbers.
pathways that the state has passed down, there's more and more,
Yeah, there's gonna be more of that.
there's gonna be more and more of that that's required.
Yeah.
I can speak to that and you could speak more intelligently on it, but that's
Yeah.
the reality of it.
Because this year's freshman class has to complete, I think, 160 hours of work-related experience to get their graduation. So any type of, summer job during the year, and they're looking at different programs now to try to, they could get the kids out there and get them started. But like what I referenced was, we already have a fire training program working with the city. And what do you call the lot down here on Lord Street, the city dump basically has a training program set up there with
Burn buildings
containers
and
and,
different things that they can do.
And I can share on the Y side, we actually were late to it, but we looked at we were gonna do a partnership on lifeguard certification. It's a semester program, which we were gonna mirror off of that program as well. So there's more of those happening. You might be able to get them to mow your yard for free if they gotta work, right?
Yeah.
160 hours, that'd take care of it.
So if we put that in here, because last year we did just a lot of other things, if we put it in here for, the spending plan, is it that they can come to us and ask for that money?
So according to the Thomas Pittman Bible, it says,
Hold that up. My Bible.
revenues from a TIF district for educational or worker retraining programs. And there's a state statute there, so you'd have to pull that statute, and then the program would have to comply with those guidelines.
Okay.
What does retraining mean?
Means they didn't listen the first time.
No, what I'm talking about, say is somebody
displaced worker.
displaced worker, exactly.
Yeah.
That's just one.
So it will be defined under Indiana Code 36.7.25.7.
36.7, 25.7.
And Crystal, reading through this too, when we get this adopted, do we have something in here that allows us to do that as well?
I just gave you my plan, but I assume that if it's listed, then it's listed.
Okay, perfect.
We listed everything that was eligible.
So we had the same dollars as we had last year. We have 250,000 more. How would you guys like to split that up? Do you want to put some towards the educational training programs?
Can I make a suggestion on that? I wouldn't put anything here that suggests that it's binding. Consideration of application of funds for the educational program, because
Is anything binding in here?
So I was gonna say,
but that for that, you want to make sure everybody understands.
Okay.
it's almost like it further.
Yeah, that it would be eligible.
Yeah.
It's almost like it, I hate to say it like this, it's almost like it doesn't matter because we can move it around when we need to,
I
right?
would agree with that.
I mean,
That's
I hate
the way
to say
understand
it that bluntly, but
That's how they noted it last year. They said this is something that you can amend, you can move funds around, you can do what you need to do out of the spending plan, but we just have to show them that
We had something.
we have something.
And when they first passed this law, there was a big uproar because how the heck are you supposed to know what you're gonna spend the money on?
Yeah. I would say though, maybe this isn't a good, consultant, but I don't think you're gonna spend anywhere near that amount of money in professional services next year because we're doing all the heavy lifting now. We're doing the vast majority of the heavy lifting. You should certainly put money in there because you want to continue to have Jason come in. He needs to do his reports regularly, so you want to make sure you have enough money to cover that. You'll want Tom available if you've got questions as redevelopment commission or redevelopment projects come through the TIF. But I think $500,000 is probably a little.
I can't
Too
believe
much.
she said that.
I know, I worked for municipal government for too many years. I worked for government for too long, so it's like.
Yeah.
And what's the grants and
I'm
contributions?
really comfortable that ought to be.
That would be, is that in the spending plan?
Yeah,
The grants and contributions, yes.
what is that? That's,
Well, I will tell you, because redevelopment commissions can receive money besides TIF.
right, and this is to,
So I think, so like, when I worked for the city of Elkhart, we had property that we acquired with TIF money, but then we leased it out or sale of that wasn't deemed as TIF revenue. It's non-TIF revenue. So you can do much different things with that money. It's not subject to the TIF rules. So you could do grants or contributions that are not eligible under TIF with those other
That
funds.
money.
This group doesn't have that, but again, this is kind of a statewide standard form.
Okay.
Can I make a comment also? You understand that you've got $1 million on hand, right? Your spending plan is only required to address the new money coming in next year. You don't have to comment on the amount that's in the bank.
Oh,
So
Conversation.
I didn't know that, yeah. So we have to turn this in December 1st. How do we know what new money we're getting next year?
well, I mean, you can look historically to see how much.
Okay.
So say like this year through September 30th, we've received $175,000. Like we only have to account for that on here because that's the new money?
Or if you knew, like if you had something to already, like you've been working with Amanda and you know you're gonna need $500,000 for sidewalk improvements in this area.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if you knew, you could just stick it in and be
It'd be a
done with
good
it.
idea then.
But we don't.
There are places in Indiana that are sitting on pushing $20 million in their side.
So they're not looking at us to zero out
So
our
we're like,
account
our
every
million,
year.
woohoo, and they're like, really?
Well,
Because we
and
have 20.
honestly, it's taken you how many years to get this much? Are you really gonna be able to spend it all in 1 year?
I hope not.
then we'd be broke.
Yeah, then where do you go?
Give put a high side estimate of how much you're going to get next year based on historical, and that's what you have to talk about.
And do you actually have debt service? Yeah.
Are you
That's
paying off
This is a different-
facilities?
so this is a different conversation, because we had this as well last year, we had to show that. We had to have this too, because, I mean, Kevin's right, we had to show it for every dollar we had, they required that, because otherwise the money went back to them. If
Went
we
back
weren't
to
showing,
the,
that's what we were describing, that's what was described
excess.
last year.
I don't think that's correct.
Okay, so to get through this, round numbers, and like Mark said, it doesn't mean anything, but it does mean something. Mark, you're looking at, you've got numbers in mind. Where would you put those dollars at?
I'd probably put them in education and training, because that's a pretty wide,
The employee training and the education one, or there's two on top of each other?
both.
So put
Split it up.
100 in each of those? Is
Yeah,
that what you're saying? Okay, great, I like it. And then what about the police and fire capital?
I'd put some there, and then
Right.
I'd put some in operating expense.
So you,
So we need some in professional
Non-tip.
expenses too.
You're not allowed to to use TIF for operating.
The one we had last year, the change, you'd put the change in there.
And I'd put some in capital expenditures, because you just never know. I mean, I
So-
don't think we have anything planned, right?
So we have 200 in there now, leave the 200 in there. Take the 500 down to 400, 300?
Sure.
Take it to
What
300?
have you even spent? Do you know what you spent this year on
Yeah, we do.
business?
What's that?
So in
Yeah.
July, we had 1,000,000.
Since July, we spent about 9,000. So we're not gonna need that many, but we have it in there. So if we go,
Say 100,000.
if, what's that?
100,000 in professional.
Well, I'm thinking, how do we get, like for Retha's, like the professional is you guys, but how do we do what Retha's, when she doesn't have room for it in her budget? Do we do anything? Is there a way to, where does that dollars come from? Is that all professional? Is that where those come from?
Yeah, if you needed to do a plan or study and an area in the TIF that Retha would have normally done on, or, you know, could have done out of her budget, she could do it out of this, that would be another professional service. Like if you need to hire somebody to do a utility analysis, like, hey, what's it gonna cost to extend this water? That would be a professional service.
So if I'm doing this correct, the debt service, we leave at 100. The capital expenditures, we leave at 200. The professional, we take to 300. Police, we put 100 in. The educational, we put 100. The training, we put 100. And that leaves about 130 or somewhere rough math in the operating expenses,
Which cannot be TIF.
which is non-TIF, correct?
Eric, what is the debt service related to?
I don't know, we had it last year, so we just left it there.
Did you spend it?
I don't think,
I don't think you have any.
we don't have any,
We don't have any debt.
we don't have any
When
debt.
we did this last year, you thought you
We
might.
thought we might,
have
so we
that
still,
by this
Yeah.
time.
that's still on the table, that's potential, but it's kind of backed off. I don't think it'll be there.
Yeah.
So,
What'd you have in police and fire? I'm sorry.
100.
Everybody gets 100.
You get a car and you get a car.
Is there a place on here for board fees?
Like, are you, yeah, there should be.
There is still zero. We're gonna leave it the same.
Plan commission.
Still zero, but you get my love for all of you and your hard work.
And then the balance will go towards the operating expenses.
You can't use TIF money for operating.
The operating expenses is non-TIF revenues resources, right? We used it we have it on there last time. What is the,
And you might note, not,
it says it right on here. It
That
says
might have been an error and it was supposed to be police and fire capital. I'm wondering.
I don't know, I just saw it was on there last time.
Because we don't have any non-TIF.
Because we don't have any, so
So this doesn't have to be passed till December. You have
December 1st.
You have a guidance on what we're discussing. Come with what you said and we'll vote on it the next time.
you want to vote on it November 13th?
Yep.
On whatever you recommend.
Oh, the only problem with that is
We have that
With
public
everything else.
hearing.
it's a public hearing and it may be hard to describe what is happening.
Yeah.
And we don't have to be down to the last dollar is what you're saying.
Can we just do something in other anticipated expenses? Like, we don't know
We
yet.
will
because
have some of
we
those
have
for-
never, yeah, if
think
we
that's
have some amendments when we do Sarah Nova, when we,
You can do whatever you want.
what I usually recommend is that you put in it is to projects set forth in our economic development plan.
okay. So other anticipated expenses of projects set forth in our EDA.
Implementation of projects in the economic development plan.
Can I add that to, that wording to the spending plan that goes at DLGF?
Sure.
Because this is just like a spreadsheet that I think Jason Semler, somebody had given us last year that just said, put in the dollar amounts.
So it's under the other anticipated, that's where we're putting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
projects
that's not a
set forth
state form.
our EDA. Okay,
You can change that to, as long as it complies with the law. You don't have to use that. You're not bound by that.
we were given a few different options of forms, so we'll look at that and add. So what's left? So debt service, because that's potential, capital expenditures, professional services, police and fire, education and training, employee training expenses, and then other anticipated expenses, projects that are set forth in our EDA plan. And is that what you want me to do to add up to our amount? Okay. Do you wanna, we need to vote on that to get it approved for Ryan to submit to the DLGF?
So here's the numbers. You wanna write them down?
I do.
Debt service, we're gonna keep it at that 100. Capital expenditures, 200. Professional expenses, 300. Police and fire, 150.
150?
Yep, I just adjusted that so it looks right. Education, I adjusted to 150. Employee training, 150. And then that should leave you with the balance, which I didn't do that, 300, 600.
Did you keep the operating expenses?
No, we got rid of that
We
because
got rid of that.
that was an error. We can't do that because we
Yep.
don't have.
I missed it.
Sorry.
No problem.
The 1050, right? Isn't that what you said? So that gives us. Oh. I say 1050.
Yeah, that's fine again. And you got, the rest of it goes in the
That gives
balance.
us 88,533.58.
In the balance.
Yep.
And the last one,
In the other anticipated expenses set forth in our EDA plan.
It's the easiest way to spend money. Bucks.
88,000 what?
88?
88,533.58. Did you check me on that? Is that what you had or pretty?
I was just adding up what you were reading on.
Perfect.
I suspect these forms were just put into a particular file and I never read by anybody.
That's what Jason said too, yeah.
So, Bill, did I hear you say you made a motion to pass that?
Motion for this?
Perfect. Bill made a motion. We have a second?
I second.
Kevin can't vote, right? You can't vote. So, all in favor?
Who seconded?
I did.
Carrie did. All right, I know we gotta get out of here for sake of time, but was there anything that I missed that we need to take a motion on or do anything else on, or are we ready to hear a motion for adjournment?
I have one other thing, if I could mention it.
Yes.
And this is kind of off the cuff, but the EDC just recently, and I'm telling you guys this just so you are aware of it, just got a grant for $250,000 from the Don Woods Foundation.
Correct.
That we can give to high school kids going to college in manufacturing. There's other areas, but manufacturing is kind of the one. And in our last meeting, they offered us this grant and we got 25,000 of it for administration. The board talked about, well, we're not sure it's worth doing because we're not sure we can give the money away. And I thought, you're nuts. I mean, what are you talking about? This is money we can give to students up to $10,000 a year for 4 years. So $40,000 these kids will get to go to school.
It's 3 students.
Long story short, we ended up adopting it because I opened my mouth and said, we can. Now I'm part of that committee, so I'm just telling you that because if you've got kids or you know of kids that are going to school, please refer them to the EDC because it's literally up to $40,000. And it's also eligible for adults that are wanting to go back to school.
And you said it's for like manufacturer training, like a trade training?
There are other areas that will qualify, but manufacturing is kind of the main one. We've got a manufacturing school right here in town. I mean, if we can't give, 250 divided by 40,000 is, 6.5 students. I mean, if we can't find that many kids.
So would that cover like engineering?
Yep. Yeah.
If you get on Don Woods, they're usually, if you look at them, it'll say what their mission is, which lines up exactly with that, kind of gives you some guidelines.
And if we do a good job with it, they'll just automatically give us 250 again next year. So, I mean, I'll get
That's
to the
awesome.
schools, we've
Thank
got to
you,
do a
Mark.
good job of that, so anyway.
Great. Anybody
you.
have anything else? We can make a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn for the day.
Second.
All in favor, stand up. We're done.